Welcome to Seekers and Shifters, where we talk to the world's foremost experts in personal growth and development and ask them everything we really want to know. Hey friends, welcome to Seekers and Shifters. It's Michelle, your hostess with the mostest, and today I have Crystal Morris with me. I'm so excited to have you, Crystal. Do you want to just introduce yourself real quick?
Well, you said it all. Hi, Michelle. I got to know you so well in some of our emotional clearing work, and I am a energy worker. I am a plant medicine facilitator. I am a tantric body worker. I am doing a lot of things that I don't really even fully understand because I just keep learning new modalities. I quit the corporate world around 2020 after my first psychedelic experience and have been kind of shifting and doing things to help others in that space ever since.
Yeah, so definitely a seeker and a shifter yourself. You're like me when you said adding the modalities. That's how we met. We were adding another modality. We were in class together learning something new. Yeah. And of course, like my people are calling me while I'm doing this. Like, stop. So we were learning something new together. We were learning emotional clearing, but we got a chance to get to know each other while we were in class. Obviously, we get a little bit deep in there. We're coaching each other. We're hearing about each other's lives. And one of the things that fascinated me so much about you was that you are a plant medicine guide and you guide other people on plant medicine journeys. I do want to hear more about that origin story. So you had the corporate job. You may or may not want to say where you were working, but tell us what happened and how your life changed from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent the last 10 years with some of the biggest tech companies. If they were on the FANG list, I was with them. And, I ended up finding my way to working in Oregon, which during COVID, for another company, and did not like my job. I was miserable. Quite frankly, the girls I worked with were very manipulative and very catty. So that lifestyle. And by randomness of the universe, I found myself in Boise, Idaho, over Halloween weekend to connect with a man who I'd met on Bumble. And is synchronicity, as the universe does it, because my boss was like, "Hey, I need you to go to Idaho to go help open this new site." I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And over that weekend, I had my first experience with DMT and with LSD, not at the same time. And
We don't do that at the same time.
might not be the best idea. And in life events, did also happen to lose someone who was very close to me to suicide. I actually felt them leave, and it was kind of part of my spiritual awakening. But something in that journey told me I needed to quit that world. Like I needed to step away. And the bereavement time that I was able to take when my friend passed allowed me to really sit with like what I wanted to do with my life. And it was very interesting because the day I committed, like I tousled with it, I took time away from work, and the day I committed to it, I said, okay, I don't know how I'm going to figure this out, but I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit and it's going to work itself out. And 2 hours later, Tesla, which was one of the companies I worked for, which I still love very deeply, went into the S&P 500 out of nowhere, and my stock tripled. And I was like, oh, okay. This is my safety net. It might not be enough to live off for the rest of my life, but this is like a sign from the universe that I need to do this. So called my boss, said, hey, I think I'm going to retire. And he said, well, damn it, I can't argue with that. And, retired. Found my way to moving to Austin on a whim. Just woke up one day and says, I think I need to move to Austin. And, kind of just started on my healing journey. And, it wasn't initially for me a part of like doing plant medicine. I kind of played a little with LSD a little bit, but I really had never sat in a sacred ceremony. I hadn't had anyone to facilitate for me who I trusted, didn't even know where to start. And that was around the time that app Clubhouse was still kind of semi-popular. Like it was definitely more popular earlier in the year, and then it was kind of on its decline. But as luck would have it, I found my soul tribe on Clubhouse and fellow medicine sisters. And I met a woman who lived in LA, and something in me was like, I think I need to go sit with mushrooms with her. And so I flew out to LA also on a whim and did my first medicine journey of 5 grams of mushrooms, which is considered a hero dose. And something in me was like, I need to do this every month for at least a year. And with that, I just committed to myself that I was going to do that, started working with that, sat with, fellow sisters in ayahuasca. And 1 year later, I was still figuring my own shit out. I wasn't even trying to coach other people in it because I didn't even know where to start. But the more and more that I started writing about my experiences and sharing what was changing in me, and obviously my energetic vibration started changing, I just started to attract people who were like curious and just like, hey, tell me more about what you're doing. How do I get started with this? So I started, baby steps, started teaching and coaching people, particularly in the corporate world, on microdosing, just getting them kind of introduced into the idea of the medicine world and the woo without really like deep diving in there. Started with that and just doing groups. And as it started to continue to build, then started doing one-on-one work with those clients who were kind of graduating out of those microdosing courses. And now a year later, I really, really love what I do, which is I like really working on one-on-one with clients in private containers, or I love doing couples work. And it's really evolved into this really beautiful space of finding out and tailoring a container to exactly what someone needs, and then mixing in my other modalities, including our emotional clearing and my work with Tantra, and even work that I'm doing with my partner. And it's pretty freaking cool, actually. Like, I love it.
I love it too. And I love how passionate you are about it. I mean, it's obviously lit you up. You're obviously on your path with it. And just the way that like you have come into yourself is really beautiful to see. My favorite part, one of my favorite parts about your story, is the whole leap in the net appears thing, which we have both experienced multiple times in our life, and which we would like to tell everybody watching this is a thing, this is true. A lot of times when you show the universe that you are really ready, and you show that by showing your faith, the universe will provide for you. But that's a scary, hard thing to do. What do you have to say to people that are thinking about that?
Dude. It's so scary. It's so scary. And doing anything from stepping away from that level of security is horrifying, particularly when you're used to making multiple six figures and then saying, okay, I'm going to completely cut that off and rely on whatever I'm going to produce. It's so much easier being a worker bee. And you have that consistent paycheck coming in every time. You don't have to, you're not being judged or evaluated or paid on who you are as a person. It's part of your contract for selling your soul to the corporate world. But yeah, I would just say the worst thing that can happen is you go back to it. You go find another job. But if you don't take the leap, you'll never know. And I fully believe that the leap in the net will show up, happens when it's the right time. Obviously, there are circumstances that you might leap and it might not show up because it might not be in alignment for what your soul is calling you to do. But I don't believe it's one of those Dumbo magic feather situations where you can make believe in your head all you want, but nothing's actually going to like fully come to fruition. I think that when you're in alignment and when you're on your right path for what you want, it'll show. And it's just having the belief in yourself and having the belief in the bigger picture of the universe. But that can be very scary, particularly when you are, not so big in the woo spectrum. Like when you're pretty new to this and maybe don't believe in God, maybe don't believe in source, whatever your higher calling might be, to put your belief system into a higher power, it's very intimidating and very scary because,
that when the belief is what makes it work. The faith is what makes it work. And it's just, it's one of those things we dance around talking about faith. Sometimes we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to say it in the wrong way. And everybody has different language for it, different words for it. But at the end of the day, it is that belief that there's something else looking out for you. And there's something else guiding you and watching you. One of the things that I love about, and I'm just going to use plant medicine as the general term, but one of the things that I love about those types of experiences is it really, in my experience, has connected me up to that feeling very true and very obvious, because it bypasses the logical conscious mind. So when you and I are sitting here talking about it, we can be like, sure, there's probably something that has our back, but your logic mind is going, is there? I don't know, maybe not, and it's the monkey mind is there. When you go on some of these different journeys, it bypasses your conscious ability to get in your own way. and the capital T truth appears. I don't know how else to describe it. How do you describe that to people who have never done any of this before?
You said it spot on. I mean, it's really bypassing the rational mind. But I think the bigger part of it, and for what I call in with a lot of people who I work with, is it's really also reconnecting them to their heart. And, for a lot of us, whether we've had traumatic childhoods or, what I call like the small trauma of like the Chinese water torture of parents like mine who, just weren't really available, weren't emotionally available, just not very around and present, and can't really have an emotional IQ conversation to save their life. We got so disconnected from our hearts and being able to articulate our emotions in a safe way and feel safe within being in those spaces. And I think when you can finally feel that energy of love in your body and love for yourself, that's a huge shift for a lot of people who've never felt that before. They've never felt safe within their own body. But the other beautiful part is like by bypassing the rational mind, you also get these amazing downloads of realizations around your life, realizations about relationships or where you want to be or how you're being authentic within yourself. And, yes, you might see ancestors, you might see all these things, but it's really from that how you apply it into your life that really makes the biggest difference, because you can have these profound experiences, but if you just go back into the hamster wheel and go back to the day-to-day grind, it's a beautiful thing, but it doesn't really impact your life at a greater scale.
Well, and I think, and we talked about alignment earlier, but I think that's the feeling of when I say capital T truth, what I mean is it feels fully aligned. There's no questions in that moment about what's true or what's real. And then, then you go back into your sober state, and all of a sudden you have all these questions. I think one of the things that was most profound for me, one of my big aha, mind blown moments was sober isn't the default state. It's just another state, and it feels like the default state because it's what we walk around in all the time. But it's just another state with its own lens, with its own coloring of our perceptions. And then we can move into a state over here, a state over here, a state over here, and we can see things completely differently. And that to me is very comforting, because when things feel very stressful in my regular waking state, I think, well, this isn't the truth. This is just how it feels in this state.
Yeah, well said. I mean, I think, it's going back to state, whether your normal state is just another form of an emotion. So it's just one more thing of like what your current frequency is, what your level of emotional clearing is, like whatever is your situation for that day. You also have the opportunity to redefine that truth in that moment. So if you are in a current state, then really sitting with like, what do I need to shift in my energy, in my life, in this moment, to be able to get into a different state or frequency, whether that means, screaming at the top of your lungs, pounding a pillow, dancing your ass off. Like any one of those things can shift your state in a second. Taking a microdose, like whatever it is. So I think, with that, there's so many options in our day-to-day that allow us to not live in our own shit.
Absolutely. And yeah, to your point, there's lots of ways to shift your state. Drugs are one of them, but also we can shift our state with emotional clearing. In NLP, sometimes we'll anchor a little button on one of our knuckles that if I push this button, then that's going to make me feel happy. That's going to make me feel inspired. I'm a big nerd about, I've got to have my lighting right. I've got to have my music right. I've got to, you know what I mean? Like, because I'm going to put myself, whether it's in the mood to work, in the mood to relax, in the mood to go to sleep. We have control over our states. And when you start to experience that control over your state, life feels a little bit easier to navigate. Don't you think?
100%. 100%.
I'm curious with the different types of medicine. How do you, and if you want to get into this, great. If you don't, that's okay too. We don't have to. But I kind of want to know what's good for what different type of situation, or is it really individual? Like some people respond this way to this thing and some people respond that way to that thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just speak to, who tends to find me and the medicines that I work with. Obviously, I've sat with ayahuasca a number of times, but it's not something I serve. The medicine has never called me forth to be a server of it. Mainly I work with psilocybin, I work with MDMA, and I work with a form of DMT called Jurema, which is an NN-DMT. And I play a little bit with, some other, synthetics, but really those are the three main medicines I serve. And I'll say for what most people who come to me want to experience, it's being able to relax into the state of even going into the medicine experience. Sometimes people will find me where maybe they've done LSD or MDMA in party settings or recreationally when they go to Coachella or, Burning Man or whatever, but they've never actually sat with the medicine in ceremonial space. So their nervous system has been attuned to these wild lights and lots of movement, and not actually just being like, I'm going to be present with myself and sit in this quiet, sit and take in this music and just be present in my own body, versus having all of these external distractions that are cool in their own right. I definitely am not downplaying the effect of having those experiences.
Fun.
But there's the theme of set and setting exists for a reason, and that, when you're really doing the introspective work, that's where the set and setting really comes into play. So with the MDMA, it's just the most beautiful heart opening experience of feeling like you are connected with your heart, feeling love within your body. From a tactile sensation, obviously it feels really lovely, where you've probably heard of people just wanting to rub up on furry things on MDMA, and but it feels very, very loving. And with that, I've also been working with private clients to really help them re-experience what love can feel like in their body, and doing somatic body work for them after an MDMA session, and reintegrating those feelings into their body. And then layer that in with mushrooms, where, if we start people with MDMA and then take them on a mushroom journey, then the mushrooms really open them up for that clarity, or for those experiences of whether it's healing, or whether it's processing trauma, or whether they're experiencing loss, or whether they just need to have a really a beautiful experience of just seeing themselves in a different light. The medicine is so intuitive in that all I really am as a server, I am in service of the medicine. I am not a server of the medicine, because, the medicine knows what's best. What my role is really holding sacred space, being there to support people when they might be going through various things. So whether that's doing energy work on them, I use actually emotional clearing during sessions, and also just if they need to cry, they need to cry, just making that space a safe container for them to feel like they can express. And then from there, the medicine does what it's going to do. So they can have an intention. And I always have people have intentions going into a ceremony. I always tell them hey, take that intention and just throw it out the window and just be with what's going to be, because the medicine's going to give you what you need, not necessarily what you think you want.
Absolutely. And, to that point, I think you're probably better served going into something like that if you are able to sit with yourself in your waking state, in your sober state. So many people can't even sit with themselves sober. And we joke around a lot about, it's so terrifying to be alone with your own thoughts. This is what meditation is about. This is what holding space for yourself is about, before you start to layer something else on top of that, because really you are talking about facing what comes up when you're not distracted, when you're not dissociated, when you don't have the lights and the music, or when you don't have your busy life, or your kids, or your job, or your physical hunger, or whatever it is that's distracting you. What comes up when you just try to be. And that is shockingly difficult for a lot of us who are conditioned to just do all the time.
Yes. I think being in that constant state of productivity, being in the state of my accomplishments, my worth is tied to how much I produce, how much I am, creating, how much I am making. And you add that into the layer of stress, and, to go back to not being comfortable within sitting within yourself. I can speak for myself, where when I worked for those big companies, I would work 60 to 80 hour work weeks, right, and then go home. And my first intuition was always to pour a glass of whiskey every day when I got home. Yeah. There was no rhyme or reason for it. It was just I needed that conditioning in my head to allow myself to even decompress enough that I could chill. And I finally had this realization where I was like, holy shit, I am just drinking just to even normalize myself. Which, at that point you're just numb because you're just drinking every day and not feeling what you need to feel. And so I set myself a 21-day goal where I said, okay, for 21 days, I'm going to not drink when I get home. I'm going to drink some pre-workout. I'm going to go hop on my Peloton and just take a 20-minute ride. And that allowed me to like get out of that cycle of constantly just needing to drink in order to be normal. And I've been joking about this for some time now where, once I started my healing path and the more plant medicine I did, because I was always like either coming out of ceremony or preparing for another ceremony, I was always in some form of, dieta prep. And, it's been coming on for some time now where I was like, shit, I'm going to be one of those sober spiritual people pretty soon. And sure enough, I'm pretty sure it hit where Thanksgiving of last year, I had 3 glasses of wine at Thanksgiving and felt like complete crap. And now it's like, yeah, now it just doesn't do it for me anymore. It doesn't taste the same. I still love the flavor of it, but it's not exciting for me to put that into my body.
Right.
And I think it's going back to like, what energy do we want to be in, and with that, how are we actively distracting ourselves, and how are we building ourselves or allowing space for ourselves to clear what we need to clear. And one of my my mentors said it really well. We were talking about medicine, plant medicine in general, and she says, anytime she feels like she's maybe getting addicted to something or using something too much, she always says that, am I using this, or is the medicine using me, or is it a symbiotic relationship? And really coming back to like the truth of like, is this an addictive thing? Because we all have addictions, whether it's food or alcohol or work, stress, whatever it is, shopping. But as long as it's something that, right? Yeah, but as long as it brings you back to like, is this something that's good and beneficial for you, then I think it's always a good thing to sit with.
Well, yeah. Is it something that I'm taking to open myself up, or is it something that I'm taking to shut myself down? I mean, I too had years of
Exactly.
Of work life where I was on ADHD drugs. And it was like, I take that to wake up in the morning, and then at night I'm drinking to calm down, or smoking weed to calm down. And it was like this, I got this pill makes me up and this pill makes me down. And that's not what we're talking about, because that is a way to use it to dissociate from your truth. That is a way to just say, I'm going to go and dissociate from all of my needs. I don't need to eat today. I didn't sleep enough. That's fine. I'm going to just like go put my face up and go kick ass at work. I'm a boss ass bitch. I used to say, like, I'm a motherfucking professional. I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Versus using something to associate more into your truth of who you actually are, or what you're actually aligned with, and to be able to be still with it, and to be able to listen and feel and see and experience something that you're not expecting, something that may come in for you. And like you said, it may be super pleasant in that moment, may not be super pleasant, but to be open to receiving, versus I think with some of these other substances like alcohol specifically, we're using it to shut down. I don't want to receive right now. I want to just shut down and go to sleep. Right.
Yeah. It's the numbing factor, and, some people have their different viewpoints on cannabis. I think, cannabis can be used, in a very beautiful medicine way. And I think other people use it also to dissociate and just kind of numb themselves from their reality. And I think the beautiful part about the medicine is, you hear these stories of like, oh, I had this bad trip. There are no bad trips. There's bad planning. There's bad execution. You might have a challenging trip, but, if your first experience with mushrooms was you and your buddy don't measure anything, you throw a bunch of mushrooms into a blender with some orange juice, chug it, and then go try to get sushi and drive completely high off your ass in a Target parking lot. Like, yeah, that might not be a pleasant experience. Or, if you end up taking way too much and then going to a rave where you're suddenly feeling very claustrophobic, that's, not the best setting, which goes back to, proper planning around everything. But there are no bad trips. There's just bad, challenging experiences.
Well, and you learn something either way.
Hopefully you learn something.
hopefully you learn something. It doesn't kill us and all of that. For folks listening who have not tried any of this ever, what's like the best starter? Like, where would you tell people to start?
I mean, honestly, I would just start getting a little bit of research for themselves. Some of my favorite books, Michael Pollan, How to Change Your Mind. There's lots of great documentaries and just kind of feeling educated about it. There are so many different types of medicines, different types of experiences, and just to kind of sit with what is the experience that you want. There's the belief that you need to go out of the country. While it is a very beautiful experience, you don't have to go to Costa Rica to sit with ayahuasca. You don't have to fly to Canada to sit with mushrooms or go to Amsterdam. Like there are many of underground facilitators and also, above ground facilitators that, can work with you. There's everything from ketamine to mushrooms to all sorts of plant-based medicines like San Pedro or ayahuasca that are just beautiful. And I think just putting that energy out there that like that's something that you're interested in, you'll start to then obviously our phones hear us, so your Instagram will probably start showing you people under recommendations. But I think for most people, like the thing is just the best thing to do is start small. Whether it's microdosing or something, just to even feel comfortable with. Like, okay, I can understand. I can work with this. I know how this feels in my body, because the most challenging thing, and I can speak for myself, was, going into my first 5-gram journey, I had no clue what to expect. And my rational mind was trying to fight me for at least a good hour and a half of like, I'm going to power over this. I'm going to think through this. What is this? What's going on? Am I, is this like what, all of these, what should this look like, overtook the complete calmness of what should be a beautiful experience. So I think being able to feel comfortable, whether that means getting enough education, trying enough like smaller experiences, and making sure you find the right facilitator. I would not recommend to anyone trying a ceremonial level dose on your own, just because you want to feel safe. Like you want someone to be able to look out for you. And, obviously no one's ever died from mushrooms, but there's still something of like something beautiful about having someone hold space for you, having someone help you to the bathroom, get you water, cook you food. But yeah, I think it's just be smart about it and trust your gut. If you come across someone and something doesn't feel right, don't do it. And know that, there are tons of resources. There's amazing websites out there of people who are, doing trainings, who are doing just education around everything. And, the beautiful part of it is, while there is a lot of challenges with legalities, there's such a huge amount of people underground and above ground who are trying to do the work in educating people toward these sacred medicines that have been brought up throughout history as part of healing and like enlightenment and being able to get people back to their truth.
Yeah, and bringing up the legality, what's interesting is that that's changing, that's shifting. I mean, it wasn't even 10 years ago that weed wasn't legal most places, and now it's legal. I think in 26 states, more legal than not. You see mushrooms, I think, legal in I want to say Colorado and Oregon, and you're seeing ketamine at least being legal to use in therapeutic ways by different companies that have specific types of licenses are able to issue ketamine and being used for treatment of PTSD. And so I feel like for the first time in a long, long time, 70 years, we have the law coming back around and saying, hey, maybe it's okay. I think when you look at the 60s, the 70s, LSD starts to come out and people the government started to say, wait a second. What is this?
They're waking up.
And this might not be good for, and then we find out that and I don't want to turn this into conspiracy town up here, but we find out that the government, the CIA, et cetera, was doing experiments with people on psychedelics, doing psychic type stuff the whole time while telling the citizenry, it's illegal. It's just kind of interesting that that's starting to reverse a little bit.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we both grew up in the Dare era, like with the woman like smashing the egg in the frying pan and destroying her kitchen because she did drugs.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to see the shift come back around from the 60s, from like Ram Dass days of, seeing the work that he's done and having it come back around the education and the testing, and having them do the solid research around how it can help, everything from PTSD to anxiety to, all of those different levels of balancing help, even mushrooms help people with cluster headaches, like all of the things. But, it's also back, not going too conspiracy theory, but, back to the big pharma side, is that, it's so much easier for us to just rely on the doctor to say, here, take this pill, like this will fix you. And then you need another pill to fix the other pill, when really the deeper work is us fixing and like our own healing inside, so that we don't need the pills.
Absolutely. And it's like without stepping into the realm of like telling people not to go to the doctor or whatever, hey, do what you want to do that feels good for you. I'll talk about it in terms of my own journey. I'm starting to realize more and more how conventional medicine is about treating symptoms or making symptoms go away, and doesn't really address the root problem. Our insurance system is all set up to basically do as little as possible at the last possible second, and not to do a ton of the things that would prevent a lot of illness, including just meditation, right? Like including just being conscious and aware of your body. Not all of this is about taking psychedelic drugs. A lot of this starts with just being able to be present and tune in to what's going on with you, so that you start to know when something's off and start to figure out how to align it, before you just go and again take a drug, whether that's legal alcohol, weed, pharmaceutical drug, just to shut down those symptoms so that you can feel better for a day.
Oh, 100%. Like if any one of the companies I had worked for actually had like a meditation room, there were so many days where I'm like, I just need a 10-minute nap. Like I could benefit so much from being able to take a 10-minute nap, but having such extreme guilt around the idea of even just wanting to go close my eyes for 10 minutes and getting a power nap in. And, now I have, other spiritual friends who are doing sound healing at corporate events, or, working with that space. I'm like, oh, like I love the fact that the holistic is coming back into play. I still see a regular doctor from time to time. I still, I do blood work and all the things, but, what has been very true is like, what can I clear for myself, and what is stuck in my body that I need to clear? And, obviously we've worked with this of like, okay, let me muscle test this and see, is this really, a rash, or is this something bigger? And not just kind of, again, taking a cream or a pill to just kind of like cover up the problem. And that for me was a huge thing this last year, because I actually got off 20 years of birth control. And that was a huge purge in my body of having the acne come back up, and having like all of this flushing of, all these hormones that were artificial in my body for some time. And, I would actually do muscle clearing on my acne some days, and just be like, what is this? Like, what's blocking this from, and having to sit with like, I am okay with having acne and I am not okay with having acne. And, but there's so much to all of it, of not just like stuffing it down, and, and bless their hearts, our parents did the best they could. But that generation was, hey, we're not going to talk about our emotions. We're going to just shove it under the rug and pretend that everything's great. And, for a lot of us who are in our 30s, 40s, even 50s, like we're all now figuring it out and trying to have to do the heavy lifting for what we weren't shown as children.
Yeah, absolutely. I was definitely raised on, suck it up and dust it off, and
nothing to see here.
Yeah, there was a lot of boomer kind of mentality people, and it makes sense. Boomers were raised by people who went through depression and kind of went through war, and like had to be in that mentality. So that's how they raised their kids, and so that's what we got. And it's nobody's fault. It's just that's kind of how that trickles down. And I love seeing everybody awaken back up to this holistic way of looking at things. I mean, to your point, one of the things that happens with conventional medicine is we pretend that the body doesn't have anything to do with the mind. It's just like, oh, this happened. I got this disease, or I inherited it, instead of looking at what was underneath that. And we know that actually a lot of what's going on with our psychology is what's affecting the expression of our genes in our body. So it doesn't mean that there's not a real disease there, or that there's a real expression there, but it's what happened first, because based on how we live our lives and how we're thinking and how we're dealing with our energy, our genes are going to express one way or another. You're not destined to get something because your dad had it or your grandma had it. Your body is either going to choose to express that or not based on what's going on. And so when we get into things like emotional clearing, right? When we get into things about doing our mindset work, doing our meditation, so much of it is preventative medicine, but I feel like nobody talks about it that way.
Yeah, I think if I don't do my, I try to do my emotional clearing every day. Obviously, there's some days I miss it, but if I'm sitting with something of like, what is going on? Something feels off. I will like first thing I'll do is just pull out my sheet and just start like clearing myself or clearing my partner.
Yeah.
Like you're off. Let me clear you.
Yeah.
And bringing that together with NLP or meditation or anything that just like centers us and grounds us. Yoga. Like I was one of those people where on top of all the drinking, I was like really abusing the crap out of my body because I was so hyper focused on productivity. So how many calories can I burn? How hard can I push myself? How sweaty can I be? Like if it wasn't HIIT yoga where I was like doing burpees and using weights, it didn't interest me. Like normal yoga felt too slow because the productive mind needed to see the results on my Apple Watch. And, it's been a big shift for me this last year of just taking 20 minutes and be like, okay, I'm just going to do it. It doesn't need to look a certain way. If I don't break a sweat, that's perfectly okay. I'm just like really centering and grounding myself in, taking a few moments to step outside when we're in our offices all day long and just getting some sunlight. All of those things are just things that we've neglected for so long and are such simple little fixes in the day that allow us to be able to just come back to ourselves and be in that space of presence and flow and being in our own energies. And the other thing I love to do too anytime I'm with my partner, if we go out, is clearing other people's energies. I'll consistently make sure that I'm sending back other people's energies to them and calling all back my energy and not taking on other people's shit.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of energetically bubbling up. I'm a big fan of Ho'oponopono and cutting those ties every single day with everybody. I'm probably going to say that on every single episode because that's how important that is to me. But making sure that, yeah, you've got your own sovereignty in that. The thing about yoga being too slow, it made me laugh because I've totally been there too. And the idea is, why is it slow? Well, because when it's slow, first of all, that makes it harder in some ways, but it also allows us to notice, oh, this position is a little uncomfortable. I'm going to sit with that and learn how to sit with that. Oh, this feels different than it did when I did last Friday. I wonder what's going on there. That type of noticing and that type of curiosity is the exact thing that's going to allow you to identify when something's off before it gets bad. So, we might have some people that watch this and hate on us in the comments, and that's cool. We're ready for it, right? Bring it. We're ready for it. We're in our 40s. We don't care. Say what you're going to say. But what we're saying, we're not going against conventional wisdom in that way. The earlier we identify and catch something, the better off it's going to be. I think everybody can agree with that. Whether you're talking about, what do I do about it now? That's kind of where stuff starts to diverge. But taking the time to stop and notice. And I love you bringing plant medicine into that, as in this is a space for you to really become aware, to really become self-aware, and to really sit, like you say, sit in ceremony, sit in a sacred space that's going to allow you to do that without the distractions of your day-to-day life. I mean, if that's powerful with or without a medicine on top of it.
Oh, huge. I mean, even if someone were to take 30 minutes to meditate every day or even 10,
yeah.
Just those little micro moments of being present in themselves. And like meditation is hard for me, honestly. Like when I first started, it was like, how much time is left? What's going on? Like I should start the laundry. Like all of these random thoughts that run through your head. It's like, okay, back to your breath. What should I eat for lunch today? It's like, you can't stop the monkey mind from trying to distract you. But with all of that, I mean, you can finally be in that state of peace and just building that normality and that regimen into your life. That's what makes us the biggest shifts. Being able to be present and just acknowledge what's coming up for us in our day to day. And I think, kind of going back to the boomer generation, we were also taught to like not identify or not share our feelings. And that's what leads us to be able to have more healthy relationships is if our partner upsets us, instead of responding and causing a fight, like sitting with the emotion, identifying it, and then being able to go back to them in a way that can address like, hey, when you said this is how it made me feel. And this was insensitive, or, I didn't appreciate this and here's why. And approaching them from more of a space of love and calmness versus reacting out of our triggers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's interesting there is I think that boomer mentality is, oh, your feelings are inconvenient for me. Like, don't express your feelings because it's inconvenient for me. Well, what's really inconvenient for you is when somebody stuffs all their feelings and then blows up, or when somebody stuffs all their feelings and then gets really sick from it. That's
Mhm.
actually more inconvenient. I think a lot of us have had to retrain ourselves to be able to let a little bit of the air out of the balloon sometimes so that the balloon doesn't pop, and to really get our head
Yes.
around that, like a little feeling is not going to kill you. It's not going to kill you to feel angry. It's not going to kill you to feel sad or disappointed or guilty or ashamed. What's going to kill you is stuffing that down and just letting it rot in your body.
Yes. And, I think, besides those other emotions, like when someone is depressed, and really in a dark space, like that is what really, there's so many people in my life. I've lost, two people to suicide, and particularly men. And there's so many people in my life who, if I had known, if they had just gotten and found plant medicine before this, I think that they would still be here with me. But it's such a level of not being allowed to feel your emotions, or your emotions are inconvenient for me, and shaming people with depression, or any form of anxiety or PTSD because they it's too inconvenient for most other people. And with that, being able to have them find a safe space to be able to process their emotions. And I think I've worked with a number of therapists, so like even when my clients start microdosing, if they have a regular therapist, I'm like, cool, let's work alongside with your therapist should know you're microdosing.
Right.
And collaborating with the therapist, I've even recommended people like take a microdose and go see your therapist. You might open up more than you
Yeah.
normally would, and that's been the case. But I think the holistic route and the traditional routes can work well together in the right context. But I think the bigger healing is coming from a place of how am I getting back to myself and whole, in a place where I feel safe within my own body and can express that in relationships that also feel safe and authentic.
Beautifully said. Beautifully
Thank
said.
you.
Thank you so much for being on with us. If people want to find you or learn more about your work, where can they find you?
Yeah, best way for me is either my website, which is iamcrystalmorris.com, or my Instagram, which is iamcrystalmorris.
Go find Crystal. Crystal's amazing, and you can have very cool journeys alongside. She'll point you in the right direction.
I travel to people, so
Yeah,
I do travel.
curious. And also, as always, we're always hanging out in the Seekers Club, so come hang out with us in Seekers Club, seekersclub.org, where we get to talk all about this in a very safe space without the concern of whether people are listening to us on YouTube. Come get the real stuff in there. Crystal, thank you so much for being on with me. It was so fun having you on.
Oh, thank you so much, Michelle. So lovely to see you and spend time with you.
Welcome to Seekers and Shifters, where we talk to the world's foremost experts in personal growth and development and ask them everything we really want to know.